lawmakers and people from the industry. So lawmakers, we have seen, especially in India over the last 1 week, quite a few. But people from the industry also, there are bodies like FICCI, NASSCOM. One event that stands out in this entire mix is the World Economic Forum at Davos. Yes, because it's a hugely hosted event. But what's different about that is the diversity it brings. The fact that it's not just the lawmakers, it's not just the people who have the reins of power who are there. It's also the industry which comes in, and there are a lot of path-breaking decisions that are taken which influence every last person on this planet. So, taking some inspiration from there, we've said that we get leaders from different fields who have played different roles in their particular industry, and these are people who have walked the path and can help you with their real life insights to be able to guide you to right directions. So that's what is difference. Because I mean, one of our posts they said real insights only come from real business leaders. That's what the webinar starts off today from. The second question that I'm sure we all had is why data? Why are we starting with data? I have a story for that, and the story takes us back to 13.8 billion years back. 13.8 billion years back was when the Big Bang happened, when the universe was created. Starting from that point up to the start of the 21st century, there was data, there was information that was created. In all these 13.8 billion years, the amount of information that was created was equal to 5 exabytes. When we say exabytes, what it means is an exabyte is 1000 petabytes, 1 petabyte is 1000 terabytes, and 1 terabyte is 1000 gigabytes. GB is what we used to. So it's that much amount of data. Today, that same amount of data is being created every second day. So what happened in 13.8 billion years is now happening in just 2 days. That's the reason why data is relevant. That's the reason why data is important for us. And hence that brings us to the webinar topic, which is saying that how do you evaluate data partners and determine whom to work with? It's not an easy process, and I'm sure the two gentlemen here who are who represent the industry and the world of data will be able to tell us that in very clear words. My third important part that I'll be doing now is to introduce the speakers. Andy CHAKRAVARTHY is the Chief Growth Officer of Omnicom Media. As a person, I've known him for long years, and what amazes me is his width of knowledge of what all he knows about what he has experienced, what he has seen, what he has learned from, and what he has to offer to discuss with people. He is today known as one of the leading digital marketing experts in the country, and has a lot of foresight and knowledge which we'll be able to share and discuss with the entire forum. Rahul is the CEO of Kentrix. 15 years of experience across large amount of data, worked across multinationals and Indian companies and brands. He co-founded MMS R&D, and then which is now called as Kentrix. Again, I have spoken and met with Anders several times, and what amazed me is the amount of knowledge that he has about the field that he works with and what he's been able to do with that to be able to get to real life businesses. So from here on, I would like to get to the specifics of the webinar. And the first thing that I would like the two speakers to talk about as individuals is what are the applications of data? I mean, we've all seen BFSI use data in large portion. We've seen retail, we've seen travel, we've seen hotels, we've seen the hospitality industry as well as the healthcare industry use data in various proportions. But what are the common applications? If we can begin with that.
Yeah. Well,
Andy, would you like to take that question?
Sure. You want me to go ahead, Zahid?
Yes.
Firstly, thanks for the flattering introduction. I hope I can do some justice to what Oli said, but great to be here. Lovely to meet you, Anders, and have a conversation on data. I think data for most of the participants, it's not new. There's so much of conversation happening around data, and it's almost touching every aspect of life, not just in media and business, but in everything we do. You open up an app and you see a personalized experience created for you. You go to Netflix and you see your favorite shows, and shows like your favorite shows already there on your home screen, right? You go to Amazon and they've already started curating products based on what you bought in the past. So I think there's no doubt, I guess, in any of our minds that the data that we are generating on digital in millions of terabytes is now being put to hopefully significantly good use. There is always the dark side of data that we know exists. There's always a dark side of everything, but I think by and large, let me speak about the media industry. I mean, obviously in media and marketing, data is becoming very, very critical for most brands in most categories, right? And there are very few categories where I think data is not a conversation today. In obviously digital first brands, the whole business model is built on looking at consumer data, analyzing consumer data, building more optimized consumer journeys, and improving return on ad spend, eventually improving overall ROI. We work a lot with the auto sector, and across the auto sector, given that the way consumers buy cars today has changed completely. Today, what we call as the research part of researching the car you want to buy, the largest part of the journey happens online. So in the past, we used to go to different showrooms to see cars. Today, consumers are reading about the cars on reviews. They're watching videos done by professional auto reviewers. They're looking at content that has been pushed out there by car manufacturers. And only then they decide which two potential cars they're going to buy. So eventually, when you used to walk into 4 auto showrooms, now you walk only into 2 auto showrooms to buy a car. And therefore, for the auto manufacturer today, if he is not able to capture that audience before they come to that decision, then they've lost that audience. Because once you buy a car, you're not going to buy another car for the next 3 to 5 years. And that's where data is becoming super important, where you're constantly using multiple data sources to try and identify what is called as in-market audiences, people who are researching about cars, people who are actively watching content related to new car reviews. Interestingly, you can now also target people, let's say, for example, if I look at telco companies, a lot of telco companies have what you call as the FASTag data. Now, when you have FASTag data, or like a Paytm has FASTag data, when you have FASTag data, potentially what what model the person owns, what is the age of that model. So now you can identify people who have cars which are 3 years plus in a particular segment, and therefore they're going to be in market for a new car potentially in the next 12 months. So I think as more and more data ecosystems get created and these data ecosystems start monetizing the data, the ability of businesses and marketers to use that data to improve business efficiency, conversions, improve sales, increase sales, improve customer experience is true across categories. And there are tons and tons of examples, but I'm going to pass it on to Anders, and I think you can talk about some of the experiences you've had and how data has been put to use.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I mean, just because you also said it with Amazon at the beginning, today, even I actually, rather than going onto Google for searching and researching a product, I look at Amazon, and my preferred first choice, which I want to evaluate, who has bought it and who has also looked into other products. So what we also see is there's a tectonic shift also of customers, how they research what product and what service, of course, they are interested in. And that is, like you rightly say, not only limited now to the old historical offline way, but online. The moment we are opening our phone, we are leaving traces. These are linked to MEIDs. These can be further with cookies, all stitched together. And then, of course, also there's something we do in the offline world. We are not like avatars only on our phones. So in a consumer data company where you would now say, okay, how was it maybe a decade or longer ago and how is it right now? You have to be fast moving also with your whole ecosystem of data sources. It cannot be territorial data anymore. It has to be really one-on-one information. You have to look also at, like you rightly say, there's a fast tag system, and suddenly over here the OSMs attached to opportunities, understanding who will be in the market, searching for a new vehicle. Now this is with phones, this is with also today in the BSFI sector. Zaid was mentioning that old historical model is that applications for financial products that are totally new to credit, new to banking, especially in the Indian market, are suddenly there in front of a bank and a lender, ask for money, but they don't have a credit score. Now, what are the alternate possibilities to do this? To either reject or even onboard? And with what risk do I onboard? Now, this becomes like we know previously, negative rated PIN codes, 19,000 PIN codes against 1.4 billion. That's not even the way we want to think of. But how do I understand over here somebody's now behavior? I have to stitch online, offline information together. I have to do it not on a territory. I have to know my person. I have to also look very much now into data privacy and also data compliance with a lot of data privacy guidelines, which are in India drastically changing. I mean, the DPA is just around the corner with its regulations, and that's really right. So, and having also myself that experience of having this done abroad and being really part of this exciting journey in starting something like a consumer data company in India, I think also over a decade we have seen not only how working with data matures, but especially also what data makes sense and approaches which you have to take over here, because the reinventing, the way how consumers reinvent each other, so to say, and how fast that is. And also, like you say, suddenly there's a funnel which is getting very sharp. Out of previously 4 or 5 researchers I'm left maybe with 2. In between, who are the 3 who lose that connection to this prospect? That is very, very demanding to be digital. Toward the other end, also be looking at carefully PII data and all the data privacy guidelines, and seeing customers and prospects one-on-one.
That was interesting. That was very interesting. What I would like you all to dwell upon, especially Anders, who has the knowledge of this particular industry, what are the data sources? because that will lead us to the point of what is how the Data Protection Act would work on this, because data sources can be there are legal, there are unofficial, there is
Yeah.
a lot of call center data in India is rubbish for that reason, but it is still used widely, even by big banks, big players in the BFS. So how do we get the right source of data, and in turn, how does the Personal Data Protection Act interface with this?
That is a great, sensitive, balanced one also, as practically data creator or segmentation creator, market researcher, consumer insights creator, you have to carry. GDP, India Data Privacy Bill 2018 amendments, and DPA, and X and Y and Z. That's not going to end. And on the same stretch, you want to also see that your work is, of course, sustainable and not only at one point suddenly falling apart because you have onboarded information which henceforth cannot be utilized anymore. On the other hand, how do I approach a so drastically dynamic and explosive developing society where practically wall to wall and door to door different worlds live next to each other, which I find very, very exciting, which also got me once out of quite some settled seats abroad and made me come here and just start from scratch. Obviously, you know how to cook a recipe, so you would know what you need. You need demographics, you need to have expenditures, you need to have signals that can be used for really building income, and you have to, of course, also look, ideally these are direct sources. That means nothing which is already aggregated or blended or projected or modeled. That all dilutes, of course, accuracy. On the other hand, it's a challenge because here you cannot even look from one market to the other and build just one fits all models. So what we have realized in India, and which is also our journey in a decade, is that unlike, for example, in other markets abroad, you cannot apply the territory first approach. Whatever I would look at, pin codes, localities, grids of 50, 100, 200 meters, and then start filling these nano buckets with collated information. That is not wrong, but it over here against the dynamics, like Andy was saying also, how fast people today research and are already in their mindset narrowed down, funneled down to pre-decisions. That is not territorial information alone which can help over here. So one then is, of course, in the crossfire of also PII data, has to be handled very, very carefully at all at level of onboarding or even providing be X'd out, otherwise you are not sustainable for the next years. So this equilibrium between data sustainability, building also accurate direct source information, and creating something sustainable is, I think, a very important Bermuda Triangle you have to get lost in.
Absolutely well said. Andy, I think you had a point on data protection, because several times we've spoken about that, and you, especially PI.
Right. Look, I think that, I think as we evolve as a country, and I think as people become more and more aware of the potential misuse of data that they're generating, I think people will be a lot more concerned about how their data is being used, right? Look, I think one of the things with data protection, the DPDP or the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, is all about consent. right? I think while platforms will have to adhere to getting consent before they use data for anything, I think the challenge will also be customer education, because we are a country where digital has penetrated deep into rural markets as well, right? And let's look at an example of the number of scams that are happening on mobile today. There's a WhatsApp scam, there's a Facebook scam, there are WhatsApp call scams, etc. And all that is happening because we largely have a population which are pretty, what I would call, naive when it comes to the digital world. So I think while the Data Protection Act will become a law soon, I think one of the key challenges will be is how does the industry and I think the government as well, invest in educating customers about the importance of protecting their data. What does consent mean? Being aware of what kind of consent they're giving, right? Because the truth is that their data is invaluable. It's invaluable to marketers, it's invaluable to businesses, it's invaluable to a lot of different players in the ecosystem, and not all of them are, I would call, legitimate businessmen. So I think for us in the media world, a lot of our clients are beginning that journey of obviously recognizing that access to data will be difficult. And I think that's why there's a significant emphasis on first-party data that we're seeing, because as the Data Protection Act does come into play, potential access to data will start becoming a question mark. Clients will have to start evolving how they plan to target audiences, both existing audiences versus potential audiences as well. And I think it's going to change the way marketers operate in the digital world, right? The challenge I feel is implementation, really. I think between creating a Data Protection Act and implementing it, there's a significant chasm. And given the geographical size of our country, given the complexity of India 1, India 2, India 3, very different Indias, I think implementing it and ensuring that you are protecting the data rights of the last mile user or the last mile or set of consumers, which are really tier 3, tier 4 and rural India. I think that's really where the bigger challenges are going to lie. I think at the top end of the market, people like us in metros, etc., we are relatively more aware of what's happening. Therefore, we are going to be, at least clear about why do we need to give consent and be clear about what kind of consent we're giving, right? That's one big challenge I see in implementing the act. Is it relevant? Of course it is. Is it important? Of course it is, no doubt about it. But eventually, it has to come down to implementation. Yeah.
Well said, absolutely. Since we are ultimately we need to come to a point which is saying that how do you select a data partner? So there are a few points. I mean, the biggest point is quality of data. I mean, apart from what?
Yeah. So I would say, look,
the clearness of data is something that. Yes, please.
So I would say that, the way to look at it is, I think the first thing is authenticity. I think the second thing you'd look for in data partners, the accuracy of the data. The third will be accessibility of that data, right? A lot of partners may have data, they can't share it with you. And that's where the Data Protection Act comes into play. They may not be able to share that data with you. And the last is actionability, right? So I would say accuracy, authenticity, accuracy, accessibility, and then actionability of that data. But for example, there are a lot of data partners out there who have lots of data where they can give you insights, but they cannot provide that data to you or segments to you to activate on digital media, right? So actionability becomes an issue. It's great to know, but you can't action it, right? Telco players have lots of data points. Potentially, they can tell you a lot about the customer, but because of the way their own ecosystems are structured, they are not able to provide you with that data. So accessibility of the data, it exists, but you can't really access it, right? And I think the most important thing is authenticity, because today there are many partners, many platforms out there in the market talking about having access to tons of data. And a large part of our focus is first to try and verify the authenticity of that data. how was it generated, where was it generated from. Like, for example, Rahul was saying, at the end of the day, you have to not just look at, let's say, demographic data, but also look at multiple sources of data and start bringing them together. Now, when you do that, the sophistication of your machine learning or AI models that you use to do that at scale plays a very important factor in ensuring that the outcome is accurate, and that outcome is what we call as, is really accurate in terms of what kind of data points you're associating with every single consumer in your database. So I think the challenge for marketers and the challenge for us in media is, because there are so many partners, we spend a lot of time testing and learning with each partner and then scaling, let's say, usage of that platform, right? Because otherwise it's very difficult to establish the authenticity of data or the accuracy unless you actually use it in a media campaign and then look at what are the conversion metrics or the end metrics that you're trying to deliver. And if you can see a significant uplift in that, then you know the partner's delivering quality data.
Right. And that also takes time.
In fact,
Takes time.
yeah, and Anders had a point on this.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at eventually even wanting to reach a statistical size of India and at a granularity that you really can help even one-on-one enrichment, location analysis, and also transport it perhaps into digital against at least quantity where we would say with 91.5 crore in a master customer database, and that built with online, offline, anonymized transaction-based data becomes then really, first of all, the actionable thing. You have to also serve transparency. You have to also serve actionability. This is exactly the point. So your data processes, your data match keys have to be already speaking by itself. And also over here, practically building this with partnerships matures over time. And I also see, adding to what you said, Andy, that the difficulty lies today that everywhere, like mushrooms out of a very fertile ground, promises come. Yes, you can do income here, you can do risk scoring with us. Also here, you can understand the world with us. And everybody is practically falling a little bit into a Me Too Nash equilibrium, everybody together. And the thing is, how will now somebody distinguish this? How to, for example, also see, okay, what can I really transparently understand with whom to go with? And there's, of course, a lot. What one also has to do is one and the same data sets, how applicable do they come up? POCs, pilot projects are offered by every agency, but can I solve practically online retargeting with this? Can it also walk with me into my cohort building offline? Can it also be somewhere, for example, carving out the differences that, for example, that I see four-wheeler holding, like you said at the beginning, OSMs that are targeting maybe every 3 to 5 years. Four-wheeler holding, how does it regional-wise really develop differently? Can that also match on all different levels, practically from the household level to the top level, on all stages, authentically, the research, the more macro, down to even then the holding information at household level. And I think over here, it's infrastructure which has to be also transparency laid out. Today, AWS or Azure or other ways, most of the data companies operate are of course having their security certifications and also diagrams which immediately by data flows can be understood, that one does not see over here data misuse or theft. But also at this level, one has to look, okay, in how many different directions is that data really holding up to stress tests?
Yeah.
One more point that you had spoken about earlier was consistency, because over different time periods, there are what data quality gets affected, because in different time period data availability is inconsistent. So that's another thing that needs to be looked at.
Definitely.
Because ultimately all of this will take us to the last point, which is basically to answer the question: what are the steps to evaluate a data partner?
I think even
And each of you, at least, yeah. Anders, yes, yeah, since you speak, yes, please go ahead.
no, I think everybody at our company is, for example, over and over again fascinated how diverse the country is and can be. And myself, I'm never left alone with this fascination because they are sources which one could tap into, which maybe cover either certain subsets of geography or already subsets of consumers. That would be the understanding of a phone make, or that would be understanding perhaps also what kind of credit card do I use. We have come across in the past statements from e-com and delivery platforms that were triangulating, of course, with what phone somebody has and what card does he pay with a Diners Club or an Amex or a more basic Regalia, HDFC or whatever, or whether he has the latest iPhone, what is it, an iPhone or is it an Android, and what type of phone, to kind of level out and indicate affluence. Now, here, of course, one runs a lot also into kind of dead-end streets. It's always two sides to the medal. If I look isolated into certain kind of things, the automobile holding, the telecom behavior, my online, but also I still have to at least balance this up with my offline traces. That means my shopping and where do I go, what do I prefer also as leisure, etc. These are things which one statistically has to stitch together to cohorts. What we also see is, for example, that a lot of Indian businesses ask themselves, okay, who is my best customer? I'm seeing socio-demographic twins. People with the same income suddenly in my customer database behave very differently. People by the same income or even the same territory suddenly default or not default. And it's not only linked then to income, it's the same demographic, it's the same profession, education. You can think of a merchant and trader and a young starter in an IT company, and both having the same income, family background. The one is rather a conservative urban middle class oriented person, and the other one is an upcoming affluent new wealth in an urban territory, and right now they are twins. How do I understand their actually developments if I want to grow them also as customers, because I have a one-time touch point with them? Customer growth, growing on customer is also something which we see is today an extremely forward thinking of businesses who have been previously in recent years just looking at how to harvest more and more customers. Now one also looks, okay, how do I create that stickiness? How do I understand actually a kind of customer product affinity, my footprint? Is it also the same footprint like a peer of mine in the same industry, in the same product lines? And these are things whether coffee shop brands or NBFCs are today really concerned about. And like Andy says, then the outreach into actions, into programmatic into retargeting, into messaging really on one's devices, and also, of course, knowing where I find them in the offline world.
Yep.
Andy, you being more from the industry, your closing points.
Yeah, look.
How would you select a data point?
Yeah, so look, that's a very tough question. Unfortunately, there's no really easy answer to that. Anders was saying, there are multiple data platforms mushrooming in India. And look at India as a market. It's extremely unique compared to anywhere else in the world. Okay, because in India you have all the big four already in this country. So you have Facebook, Meta, you have Amazon ecosystem, and of course then you have others relatively smaller but still equally influential ecosystems like Twitter, etc. Then you have the Indian walled gardens, right, which is Paytm, PhonePe, Jio ads, Airtel ads, etc., etc. And there's a whole line of D2C players who are sitting on data who want to try and monetize their inventory. And these are all closed ecosystems. One doesn't know the validity of the data, etc. And then now you have what I call as mega data platforms. Maybe something like Kentrix, which have access to billions of data points, which have been created and acquired through different ways, and now there's an opportunity to use that data to drive business needs. So each one of these ecosystems is an exciting ecosystem to partner with, right? But the truth is that the marketing dollar is limited, and the marketing bandwidth is also limited. So you have to eventually, and as a marketer or as a media professional, one would not go and put all your eggs in a basket unless you know that it is going to return value or ROI to you. So today, honestly, while we spend a lot of time with the platform representatives to understand where did the data come from, how do they generate multiple data points across each unique identifier within the ecosystem, that's the first step. But then, like I said, what we do is we do test campaigns where we look at either a market-specific campaign or an audience segment-specific campaign, set very measurable KPIs, and then we run campaigns on those audiences and look at the outcomes to see whether are they improving my benchmarks that I have on other ecosystems, are they equaling those benchmarks, or are they doing worse than them, right? And eventually it all comes down to ROIs and return on investment, right? That's the only single metric which matters to any business. That if I invest in a data ecosystem, does it return better ROI than investing that same rupee somewhere else? So is there a shortcut to deciding which data platform to work with? Unfortunately not. However, I think my recommendation to our teams is always meet up with as many partners as you can, because it's very important to understand how this ecosystem is shaping up. And while you meet these partners is when you will really hit upon those 2 or 3 partners who can really add serious value to your business or to your client's business, right? And the only way to measure that is to test and learn. I would recommend that potentially that's the safest way to go about it.
I agree. It's actually like data itself is. It's 0 and 1. So also the success has to either come or it doesn't.
It doesn't come.
You from the user side and perhaps me from the data ecosystem side, I would also say there are very clear forward models and testing stages and proof stones which one has to collect, like feature importance tests, and then your data runs through a certain kind of algorithm, and these are not like practically to be manipulated. Their outcome is really speaking a very clear success rate, and that also is the way how users should look at data. Data needs to be tested, and in a market like India, for the user side, it's getting quite intensive here, because a lot of people or agencies are promising something, but as long as the spirit is there also, like Andy was saying, like he encourages his people to go out and also always research and look at things. I think the better data will always prevail, and that shall be so.
And just to add to that, I think, look, with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act now, there is also a significant liability that could potentially impact the business quite significantly, right? And this comes down to implementation by the government, but we have examples in Europe where brands that have violated GDPR have had to pay significantly large fines, right? So I think the other thing is one has to be careful about, as well as you work with data providers or data ecosystems, is to also be aware of the not just the authenticity, but also the whether they have the right to use that data or not, right? Source is really, really important, because eventually as a brand, while you may not be directly liable for using data that did not have consent, but there is a potential risk of your reputation being damaged significantly, right? So I think as much as the data ecosystems will have to take care about how they are collecting the data and how they are providing that data to advertisers or businesses, I think businesses will have to take equal responsibility to ensure that the partners they work with are using data that they have consent to use. Right?
Absolutely. And also, I think out of a pure practical reason, that if you, for example, turn to a model of a current newly acquired partner, it's looking all good, it's all going well, and that partner suddenly gets in a year or two under the weather, and you have to change your model. You have to suddenly rework. That's not only about ethics and a kind of checking, and also over here being transparent and at your end acting responsible. It's just another huge amount of work which is coming up. So also because of that, and I think also being over 10 years here and starting that journey in 2010, I personally have seen people, agencies coming and also going, unfortunately, because one always picked up easy to go, whatever, 25, 50 lakhs, Aadhaar card records over here or something like that. But no, there are really some absolutely no-goes where you as data company also have to keep that mission which you actually want. If you want to see that through sustainable, it's a lot of responsibility also, and one also has to see today, then you talk with users, potential clients, which say, but I can get this and I can get that. And on the other hand, one has to say, well, but that is actually not really like completely white. That is also very dicey if you do it this way. There's a lot of gray zone, and perhaps also in India, one will see that violations will be followed up quite strongly, which would not actually be a bad thing to happen, because then as well on the user side, as well on the education side for what is consent, like you rightly said. Also the awareness over here has to be a little bit, and will be, I think, more manifested about our traces and the data we so easily give away.
That's it. That's it.
Wonderful. I think Andy, do we have 5 more minutes from you, because you leave for a flight?
That's fine. No, we can do questions. Not a problem. I think I have a little time. So if there are any questions,
that's what. So if there are any questions, that's what we want to. Any of you who have questions can just unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I had a question, but I think Andy has already answered that, given a detailed answer to that question. Just being a marketer, what's the pain point? Because you have to deal with like so much of data every day. and from both sides, like consumer insights, say later, target campaigns and everything. So if one has to say that what is the one single thing where you can pinpoint, like it's a pain point, like stands out as a pain point, which the data partners can address or should address, maybe.
So I think that is the answer. I think there's a question for Anders on the chat.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll come to that next.
So I see over here a question. I can.
No, the question is basically saying that how do you ensure the data provided complies with the protection regulations, GDPR, CCPA, or now the India Data Protection Act?
Yeah. That is, of course, also, in my view, bringing a bit of understanding and knowledge along about the different components in and around the consumer. I have a name. It really starts with the PII data. I have a name. I have a contact data set that will be for sure a mobile phone number, an email address. I live at a place that is also identifiable and also identifies me. And then I have a first microcosmos of people around me, which is a household, a family. Then I have another cosmos around me, which is, let's say, a building in which I am, my neighbors, my friends. It also over here is, of course, all the virtual connections and also offline connections. We all know what happened to Cambridge Analytica, who stitched, like the Facebook friends together in a political campaign.
Yeah.
And we also know where the CEO is currently maybe listening to our webinar, Andy. That is somewhere behind bars. But on the other hand, to be serious once more, it is what I keep together, which is also, if one really gets into the details of data privacy guidelines, GDPR to even upcoming DPA, what either violates or not violates. If I disaggregate practically the person and keep it to the household, if I disaggregate an address and keep it away from the phone number, then I have certain kind of combinations which of course are either violating or not violating. And this is what one has to actually be very well aware of and also transparent to. So it also, at the surface for users, shows very quickly or can show at least in what ways a potential data partner is working. If I'm asking for name, phone number, address, and further details, well, that is all in itself already a string which will not be much possible to share by companies and not even already shared by any BSFI sector company. So these times are over. If I also look over here at the authenticity of sources, and if I then see, okay, what data does data provider XYZ use? Is he collecting on phone numbers? Is he collecting on names? Is he collecting anonymized PF statements to build his income statement? There it starts as well to shimmer through also what over here is either compliant or not. It's complex. It's not that straightforward. It is again also on the outside some really work to screen a data partner. That is indeed true. And on the inside also that we as data companies, we have to be fully transparent in also what we use and how we use it.
I think we have a last question for Anders. So I'll read out a question. What about data professionals? Do you think there are enough professionals who got a grip on? If not, how should the new generation of business intelligence go about with upskilling?
So if I understand this question correct, it's it's practically trying to sense, okay, what about today data professionals, business intelligence professionals, how would they perhaps be for the future should be gearing up in their with their skills. I think over here it's about also, if you want to go into the field of consumer data and also customer behavior data, then one has to really go also a psychological step deeper and think about what makes a consumer cohort. It's not only at the surface, what can I get a hold of? You also have to sit once back and think, okay, what are drivers? What are today the Indian consumer archetypes? How do I identify them? What are the regions which are, first of all, also from a historical into today, into tomorrow, showing what kind of trend developments? All of this is what you stitch together then with the data signals, which you on top can get hold of, and where you can run your models on it, and where you can show, of course, and also place your data science, your data analyst skills into it. But the actual practically understanding of what drives people and makes them decide the way they decide is also a component outside of data. And also looking and understanding over here really everybody around you. So in that field for which I can speak, it is definitely not only about the data work, but in consumer data solutions also about what is over here the consumer affinities, the consumer psychographics, and also looking over here what are alike behavior patterns, etc.
If I may add to that,
Thank you.
If I may just add to that, I think on the upskilling part, I think look, markets like Europe have had GDPR for much longer than we have, and there are potentially some very good online courses that could help data and business intelligence professionals in India kind of upskill themselves, because those courses are based on things that have happened in those markets, have addressed the complexity of those markets. And the truth is that DPDP is built on the same guardrails as the GDPR. So there's a lot of similarity between the two. So I think if you look for good online courses that are run in UK or in Europe, those could be a great starting point to actually upskill yourself. And I'm sure eventually the Indian ecosystem will follow, and we'll soon see a lot of courses coming up along which will focus on how to interpret the Digital Personal Data Protection Act and what are the key guardrails one needs to keep in mind. I think that will happen eventually.
Yeah, I believe so too. Exactly.
So let us close with a big thank you to Andy and to Anders.
Thanks, guys. It was a fantastic conversation. Lovely meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Anders, for your valuable time.
And for the participants also, I wish to tell them that we'll be having more of these sessions. So we'll keep you informed about these.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Have a lovely evening ahead. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.